Hello, listeners. Today we are talking to CRO legend Sahil Patel. Sahil is the CEO of Spiralyze, a conversion rate optimization or CRO agency based in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the many things that makes Spiralyze truly unique when it comes to CRO is its predictive engine, which analyzes winning A/B tests from over 70,000 websites. And then using these insights, Sahil's team then design, build, and deploy these tests for their clients, helping them achieve a 30% conversion rate lift in 90 days. So focused mainly on B2B SaaS, but also working across other industries too. Spiralyze have served 300 plus clients, including Netflix, NFL, Workday, and many more. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. So welcome to the podcast, Sahil.
Hey, thank you for having me. Really glad to be here.
Awesome to have you here. So you started off at Emory Business School from 1996 to 2000. You then worked as a consultant from 2000 to 2003 for Booz and Company, and then you went to Harvard Business School between 2003 to 2005. How well did your education and early career prepare you for what you're doing right now?
It prepared me a lot, and I was very lucky in a number of regards. Some of that's being in the right place at the right time. Some of it's, I look back to some of it's just like sometimes life hands you a lucky break. I was the year I was born, which roughly determined the year I graduated. Two times in a row, I graduated when the economy was on the way up. So I graduated from undergrad in 2000. The dot-com thing was it yeah, benefit of hindsight, we were a year away from the bubble bursting, but it was still on the way up and hiring was happening. And then 2005, pre-housing bubble, the economy was going up again. Had I been born a year later, things might have been different. In 2001, the company I worked at Booz and Company, rescinded all the job offers, right? So we're talking about a timing of 12 months. Because I graduated in 2000 and I had this really good work experience. One of the things all those type of companies do, McKinsey, BCG, Accenture, um, wonderful places to work, great training. They also have a good track of moving people into uh, top business schools, and that worked out well for me. And so yeah, had I not graduated when I had, maybe I don't get that job offer from Booz Allen. I don't work at Booz Allen. Maybe I don't get into Harvard Business School. I don't go to Harvard Business School. My life would have been fine, but it would have been different. So who knows? Maybe it would have been better, but it certainly worked out for me.
Yeah, I bet agency helps as well. I bet that would have helped you. But no, that's really interesting. So, and then moving past kind of Harvard Business School, a few jobs, different companies, but your first experience as a CEO was at ER Express, and I also see you were a founder there as well. How did that
That's right.
opportunity come about? Why healthcare? And I also saw in your bio you mentioned there's a lot of peaks and valleys. So what did?
There is most, and the valleys tend to outweigh the peaks or outnumber the peaks. I had already been in healthcare at that point for 5 or 6 years, healthcare tech. So it was a space I knew a bit about. And I think most founders, it's just like it's not the only way to go, but a logical way is to start something that you know something about, you've seen, you've observed some pain point that you're trying to solve. And then I had no the first investor was a family office in Atlanta. I was in Atlanta and or found myself in Atlanta again. Actually, my wife's job had brought us back to Atlanta. And so the fundraising, it's not that I would call it a happy accident, but it was again mostly right place, right time. I don't think it was like that I was so special or that it was such a unique idea, but it was right place, right time. And I knew a little bit about kind of acute care being you're in a emergent, semi-emergent, urgent care type of situation, and the investor knew that space as well. So it was a good start, and they were extremely helpful. Yeah, very helpful.
And moving on to Spiralyze then, please correct me if I'm wrong, but am I right in thinking Spiralyze is 50% software, 50% CR agency? You've obviously got,
Yeah,
because you've got the engine side, and how has that impacted your positioning? Has it helped you, do you think?
I think it's helped us a lot, and it's a big differentiator. So on the one side, you have self-serve A/B testing companies, and they're some great companies. Company that's a partner of ours, great company, great leadership, great product, big user base. There's other big brands, Optimizely, AB Tasty. There's a lot, but there's a long tail of these. Last time I checked, there was probably about somewhere between 50 and 70 companies in that space. They're not all the same. I don't mean to commoditize them, but they would, they're largely in that. You sign up, you use it well, you don't use it well, kind of you're on your own, and it's a great business model. On the other hand, there's a group of agencies that do this kind of work. There are specialists companies that all they do is conversion rate optimization. Some have a particular focus, like e-commerce or just Shopify or B2B SaaS websites or just landing pages that are more niche. By the way, the kind of the big digital agencies also have a foot in this world. Um, and uh, then kind of there's those 2 points of the triangle. And the part of the triangle where we are that I think is different is, yes, we are an agency, but the other thing we do is we scroll the internet, we find everyone else's A/B tests. Our machines figure out which ones work best. By that I mean, if you're a B2B SaaS selling HR tech and you have a paid landing page that's branded search, it can predict what are the 11 tests you should run on that page. And it can rank how likely they are to win and how much lift you should expect. That's very different. The agencies can't do that because they don't have the tech. The pure play tech companies don't do that because that's not their business model. Because by the way, that data, while very valuable, has much more value when you're actually running the tests. You put those two together. And so that's the two things we do. We help you run the tests. We have the prediction engine on which tests are most likely to work and how they work in which situation. Because we can predict, because we crawl all these tests, we can predict which tests are likely to win. Because we can predict which ones are likely to win, we can make a promise of how much lift we can deliver and how much you should pay for that. And that becomes really, really unique. If you're a pure play self-serve company, and again, those are great companies, we partner with a lot of them, you pay a monthly fee, and whether you get a lot of value of it. Now, ultimately, if you're getting no value, you're going to get out of the contract and move on. So it's not to say they're indifferent to it, but it's not, that's not the pure SaaS model. And if you're an agency, there are a few to do this kind of performance pricing, but it's not the norm. It's the exception more than the rule. So yeah, we do these three things. We do this agency, we have this prediction engine. Because we do those two things together, we're able to get paid based on the lift, to use some CRO jargon there, conversion rate lift that our clients get from working with us.
And then all of your social proof as well helps with that, I imagine, as well. So
Social proof, social proof helps for sure. And we're in a place where we have some nice social proof.
100%, 300 plus clients. It's yeah, there's a lot of great names on your website. I'll put a link in the description to Spiralyze.
That's very nice of you to say that.
Yeah. So with the prediction engine, we crawl these sites. What's the output that your design team, your dev team use? Does it give you like the layout, the CTA type, what the headline should be? Like, what does the output look like?
So the output gives us all of those things, the design, the layout, the visual hierarchy, the imagery, the copywriting. But I think, by the way, all of those things are in the public domain. You could do it. Everyone listening to this can go out and find an A/B test that someone ran. You open a couple browser windows and you compare the A and the B. Takes a little bit of effort and elbow grease, but it's doable. I think the part that's unique and valuable has to be both, by the way, unique and valuable, is that it can predict and find repeat patterns as opposed to one-off outcomes. One company runs one test, like, so what? You know, if Walmart changed the color of Walmart blue on its website, like I don't know that they did, but if they did and that somehow drove the conversion rate up, like wonderful, it works only for Walmart. You can't go tell every B2B SaaS run this test. I mean, I don't know why you would, but like you couldn't do that. Okay. Maybe I should have picked a better example. Salesforce. Okay, let's say Salesforce changed the color palette of Salesforce Blue. It kind of really only works for Salesforce. You couldn't, CrowdStrike couldn't say, oh, well, we'll go copy that color and it'll get us some lift. There's almost zero predictive power there. But let's say a bunch of HR tech companies that ran a test where instead of showing stock photos of happy people with their arms crossed looking at a tablet or a phone, which by the way, a ton of companies do that, and it's like, why are you doing this? And they ran a test where they compared that to a landing page experience where you showed a nice, large, crisp image of the product, and they compared which of those worked. And over, they run that test, and kind of mostly agnostic of what the image is, just the idea that showing the product gets people more excited about wanting to try the product than a stock photo. That's a repeat pattern. Those are the kind of tests we're looking for. That's the output that our prediction engine gives us. And look, once you've seen it, it's kind of like, no duh. The question is, what is the next thing? And so every day we're crawling the internet every day to find the next thing.
So CRO, like CRO evolving and people trying new things, and you're looking for new insights that haven't been done before.
It does. And in a sense, our customers are benefiting from everyone else's A/B tests, which is why, when we talk to a prospective customer, we always come to the table with recommendations, not just generic recommendations from the prediction engine. We actually take the time to work up at least 2 to 3 for every prospective customer we talk to, and we give them to them, regardless whether they turn into a sales opportunity for us. And they sometimes ask us, they're like, well, what if we just use this? And I tell them, I was like, you should. First of all, it's to their benefit, and I genuinely want them to be successful, even if that means they're not working with Spiralyze. But the second thing is that if they do it and they run it as a test, we're going to crawl it and we're going to add it to our data set. And it will either help validate or invalidate how well that particular test pattern works in a particular piece of context.
Well, they get value, it helps your brand, and you get the data that feeds, more websites, more repeat patterns, finding the next thing.
Yeah, more people running A/B tests is good for everyone.
So this is quite interesting. So you offer a guarantee of 30% conversion rate lift in 90 days.
We do.
How do your ideal customers react to an offer like this? What are the pros and cons for you? And is the juice worth the squeeze? I imagine the answer is yes, because you do it. But
It's just yes. That's
yeah,
the answers. Let's start with the easy one. The answer is yes. You don't, not to sound full of myself, but if you go to spiralize.com, you look at our logos, we've got pretty strong social proof. It doesn't mean we're perfect or infallible or that it works every time. Everyone to hear it from me, the CEO. How do they react to it? I think they're very pleasantly surprised. Yeah, it's a great hook. And I think they come in understandably skeptical that we can deliver on that hook. Now, we've been doing this a while, 10 years. So we have accumulated enough data and we have the social proof, and someone, they'll look at me like, okay, you got CrowdStrike, you got Deal, you got Bill.com. These are brands I've heard of, and they've signed up for this. I'm not, okay, I don't know that it works, but it's not, there must be something there. I think the thing that they're most skeptical of, and I would be skeptical of it too, is that we'll do some kind of CRO hackery stuff and we'll get them a bunch of form fills, and those form fills will be low quality. But what can you do? Take away all the fields on your form, just ask for an email. Oh, look, I got you 30% more. But it turns out they were students, they were Gmail addresses, they were bot farms in somewhere, and not only was there no value, it maybe was negative value because the sales team had to go chase down a bunch of leads that turned out to be garbage. That's, I think, they may put it in a nicer way, but I think that's the skepticism they come in with. And if I were them, I would do it too. And what we tell them is when we run an A/B test, we track the lead all the way from click to form fill to qualification to sales op. By the way, if we're working with someone on a long-term basis, we'll track it all the way down to closed win. But I'm going to stop just at sales op for 2 reasons. One is just in the context of all of our new customers start with 90-day pilots. We have to be able to show them evidence that it works in 90 days. And in B2B SaaS, that's about as far down as you can track. You can get evidence to sales op creation. In 90 days, it's hard to see enough data accumulated that's substantial to know that it's like turning into a late stage pipeline and it's turned into closed wins. Again, when we work with long-term customers, which most of our customers do turn into, we of course we track all the way down there. The second thing is just in the spirit of, for everyone who's listening or watching this at home, could they do this on their own? And the answer is yes. You absolutely can do this. It's the equivalent, we call this down funnel tracking. It's the equivalent of if you track UTM parameters in your CRM and Salesforce or HubSpot, wherever you use, almost everyone does. You can do this. All the A/B testing instrument companies support this. They usually have multiple techniques so that whenever a lead gets submitted, let's say someone navigates, they search for you, they search for uh, HR tech employer of record. That's a big category. Deal is in there, Velocity Global, bunch of others. They get to a landing page, they read it, they go, oh, this looks good. They fill it in, they hit submit. At that moment, you can tag that person as, were they exposed to an experiment, which experiment, and were they in the control or the variant? And then you can have that in that little piece of metadata added in your CRM. Okay? And if you've got multiple systems in your tech stack, you've got HubSpot as your CMS or WordPress, you've got Marketo Forms, you've got Salesforce as your CRM, you've got Snowflake running as a data warehouse kind of around the whole thing. You can then compare those two cohorts and say, okay, which cohort produced more leads, more good leads, more sales ops? That's what you should do. The best way to track it, because then you're controlling for any kind of seasonality or any, oh, we ran a promotion this month. Oh, we did a big trade show. Because when you compare the same time cohort, you're reducing, I don't want to say eliminating, but you're reducing the chance that seasonality or some exogenous event, like you did a big trade show or you added more dollars to your pay per search or your paid social ad campaigns, is responsible. Because that's what everyone's curious. I was like, oh, well, we just got more because we spent more. If you compare before and after, if you compare it to last quarter or last year, same time, that could explain some of it, might explain all of it. But if you say, hey, during the same time frame from July 1 to August 1, we ran this A/B test and the traffic was randomly split between these two versions. Sure, maybe you spent more on your campaigns during that month, but both of those groups would benefit from that. And so you're reducing, you're increasing the likelihood that the reason you got the lift was from the A/B test.
Yeah, and you mentioned another thing as well, which is one variant might get more clicks, and we're talking about the guarantee being conversion rate, but you're also then adding the metadata to CRM and seeing which one gets more closed ones. So you might get more clicks on this variant, but more closed ones on this variant, right? And then you're going to be, and if you measure it at the same time, you're actually going to be saying, okay, let's sacrifice clicks for closed one. Is that right? And you're tracking all of this?
Yeah, so it's got to be we're definitely tracking form fill and then which of those are qualified and then which of those turned into sales ops.
That's great. Is there an issue on your side with plugging into different people's CRMs and tracking, or have you got a process which is kind of the same for all clients and it's easy for you to scale?
So we have a process that works for almost all clients. Uh, it's not a no-brainer every time, but we do have a good process. And the reality is in B2B SaaS, which is 80% of what we do, the world has largely converged around a handful of tech stacks and some permutations. There's exceptions, of course, but for our ICP, which is mid-market companies, typically headcount of 100 or above, doing 30 million to 100 million in ARR, there's definitely a pretty consistent tech stack there, and there's not like a million permutations. There's dozens. So we've learned how to work with them.
Interesting. I'm just going to go off the script a little bit, but you mentioned 30 million to 100 million ARR. I know you've probably got a lot of,
And upwards,
and
and upwards, but that's where it starts. Yeah.
yeah, because obviously the higher you go, the fewer companies there are. Do you have are you more retention focused because of that, or are you able to get more coming in the door as well as keeping them on for longer?
Well, I think we are able to get more coming in the door. Um, I'd say the companies that are in kind of a billion plus in their annual recurring revenue are a good market for us. We don't do a ton at the tippy top of the market. And we do some. Those companies tend to have the internal infrastructure. By the way, I would love to work with them. Let me just be clear. I'm not turning them away. But the need or the pain is felt most at the companies, let's call it between 100 million and a billion in revenue. Over a billion, they have different pains and they have different ways of solving them. And so the ones that were the best fit are those 100 million to $1 billion type of companies.
They're the people you can help the most. That's great.
Yeah.
And what does so goal number one for you, I guess, is to deliver on the promise for the 90 days. and then obviously check in after the 90 days, and then we can carry on. But what does your process look like in the 90-day period? What from kind of start to finish?
So here's what 90 days looks like. We're going to ship about 10 tests. So we're going to launch about one test a week. You should expect 3 in 10 to win. By the way, that sounds like a low. If you're not a CRO person, you might be listening to me like, wow, that's not a really good success rate. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then the total adjusted lift, I'm putting air quotes on adjusted or an asterisk. We can talk about what adjusted lift means, is 30%. Why do we do this? To get 30% lift, you need 3 wins. To get 3 wins, you need to run 10 tests. Here's an interesting stat, and we know this because we scrape everyone else's A/B tests. But there's also some really good data that we didn't do, that other experts have validated. Across the industry, about 10% of A/B tests are winners, 1 out of 10. By the way, what does winner mean? It means when you run a split test, the variant, the challenger, whatever it is you're changing, the copywriting, the image, or social proof, gets more conversions than the control at a statistically significant level. It's just a fancy way of saying, it's kind of stats speak for there's a really high probability that it wasn't just luck that got the variant to beat the control. Okay, 10%, but it's really not good. If you are a basketball player and only 10% of your shots go in the basket, you're not doing well. If you're a baseball player, I don't know how much of your audience is American, follows baseball. 10%, you're not keeping your job. Okay. When you run tests that have worked for some evidence that they've worked somewhere else, that likelihood that when you run the test it wins goes way up. It's twice as good. Okay, you go from a 10% win ratio to 20% win rate. So another way of saying is like you should first look around and see has someone else actually run this as an A/B test? Not they just actually made the change, but you can run it as an A/B test. Okay. If you've done that and you've then validated the test with your audience or similar audiences, the win rate goes 3 times higher. Goes to 3 out of 10 instead of 1 out of 10. It's a huge difference. Because think about this, if you run, by the way, average B2B SaaS company runs about 1 test a month. We're not talking about our customers, just talking broadly speaking. So that means you run about 10 or 12 tests a year and you get 1 win. Imagine going to your boss and she says, hey, how'd the A/B testing program go? You go, well, we got 1 win. What else did you do? That was it. Just it's hard to get excited about that.
You want to do the fewest number of tests with the maximum chance of success, basically.
Uh, I might change that a little bit. You want to actually run as many tests as possible because that's where you really compound your gains, right? You run a test, it wins, you make it the control, then you try to beat it. You do that over and over and over.
It's maximizing your energy utilization there, isn't it? Like putting you in the right direction.
Yeah, a good analogy is that so if you've ever watched competitive poker players, people go on like World Series of Poker, they play all the time. Not even always just like, when it's on TV. Like they play regularly. Because the more they play, the better they get. And so A/B test is like that. The more you test, the better you get at doing it. And what good poker players, one of the skills they have, it's not the only skill that makes them good, but one of the skills is they're very good at estimating probabilities. And what our prediction engine allows us to do, not to make this all about Spiralyze, but is it predicts probabilities of different tests. And it's much better than just running good ideas.
It's making me think as well because you're obviously getting all of these patterns from all these websites. And if you get a new company that's starting from scratch and there's no data, you're probably the best person to go to design a website as well because you can understand their ICP, get some of the patterns and go, this is probably the best layout for you guys to get started. Whereas another agency might just be using more best practices
Yeah.
sort of thing.
It's interesting. It's interesting. We started doing a little bit of that. Sometimes a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. I just had this conversation with a prospective customer last month, and we went through this. They were evaluating us for A/B testing, and they said, "Hey, Sahil," they kind of came to the same conclusion you did. They said, "Why don't we just skip the A/B testing and just implement like your best winner?" I said, "Hey, we could do that for you." I said, "But let's take a look at it." And part of what you get in our prediction engine is the distribution of outcomes. And you can control for well, show me just how it worked in my industry, or show me just how it worked on paid landing pages as opposed to organic landing pages. And I said, now check this out. In the audience that's relevant for you, this particular test pattern, the one that you are really excited about, the one that I showed you, the one that I would love to test first, in the context of a portfolio of tests, this is a really good bet. It's not a guarantee it'll work, but if it doesn't work, it's part of a portfolio of bets we're going to make. And we know that one of them are going to, multiple will win, and at least one of them will be optimal. But if you just have to make one bet, okay, this is like sending a baseball player to the plate. You let them swing at one pitch. And if they get a hit, great. But if they don't, you send them back to the bench and say you're done. Would you do that?
No.
That's a terrible idea.
Nerves
It's a
might
terrible idea.
override everything.
Yeah. So I told him, I said, let's say I did this for you. We designed it based on the highest performing test. A highest performing test, about 48% of the time beats the control. About 30% of the time it's neutral. So you didn't do any harm, but you didn't do any lift. And about 20% of the time it's worse than the control. You understand that if we did this, there is at least a 50% chance your numbers don't go up. And there's a 20% chance they'll go down. Is that a bet you want to make and take to your CEO? That is the bet, by the way, that most companies, by the way, they don't realize that they're doing this. It's what most companies do when they hire a design agency.
They're making a bet that 50% could go up, 50% could go down, and you're playing the probability.
I don't know if I would say 50% go down. I would say if they're lucky, there's maybe a 30 to 40% chance they'll do better, but there's at least a 30% chance it's flat, and somewhere around a 20% chance things get worse. They're actually going to get less pipeline out of this redesign. And it's borne out in the real world. I hear this all the time. We hired an agency, we spent $200,000. 3 months later, sales pipe went down, and everyone was like, what the hell?
You're leaving it to chance. You're leaving it to chance, essentially. Yeah.
Well, you're leaving it to what looks good. And sometimes what looks good is better, but sometimes it's not. And the only way to know is to run the test.
I've got a question. So Chris Goward talks about revolutionary versus evolutionary site design. So revolutionary is what a design agency would do, which is let's start again from scratch. And evolutionary is what a CR agency would typically do, which is let's evolve the site into something new. And after speaking with you and learning, I do think the evolutionary is good because you're making it based on data, and that's the focus. But what about when the gap between how you look, you look really, really scrappy, and where you're trying to position yourself in the market, and the gap is so big that you can't really do evolutionary because maybe you need a completely new style guide. What would you recommend in those situations?
Yeah, so first you should do that. Just if you're kind of way out of date and your website's just like painfully not good. By the way, I relate to this. Just this week we were looking at our couch in our family room, and our kids are now finally older, where like the wear and tear is starting to like kids drawing on coloring on the couch or spilling their milk while they watch TV is like not happening nearly as much. And we've had this one couch ever since we had our first kid. And we just resolved to not buy spending the money on the couch till like the last kid we've got two was a little bit older. So we think we're finally there. So the couch is like 15 years old. It looks terrible. Like it's embarrassing how bad it looks. And we're just like, okay, now we need to like modernize, like get a better couch. So if that's where your homepage is, like you have this beat up couch that's embarrassing, yeah, you need to reinvent it. But here's what I would tell you. You still can A/B test your way into it. By the way, what we call it taking big swings. You reimagine. I think there's a misconception that A/B testing is you take a page, you change the color of the button, like the CTA button, and then you measure, oh, this got like 0.8% more. There's room for that. I'm not saying that stuff shouldn't be done, but we call it meek testing. And for a lot of them, it's largely a waste of time. And you know it because if you ask them, well, what happens in most of your tests? They say, we ran it for 3 months and the data was inconclusive. So we shrugged our shoulders or we just picked the one that looked best. And I'm like, hey, at least you tested it, but you're leaving a lot of chips on the table. A better approach for most B2B SaaS companies is to take a big swing, reimagine the user experience. Now, I wouldn't go redesign like the entire page, like your entire homepage, because you could spend months doing that. Entire agencies, that's all they do. But I would start with like the hero, which by the way, for most companies, about half of your audience doesn't scroll past the hero. Start with the hero, get the right headline, get the right imagery, get the right copywriting, have some social proof. By the way, those are four things that consistently work well for B2B SaaS in the hero. And come up with 4 versions and then test all of them. And don't make them like, oh, we changed the comma on the A versus the B. Like, try a totally different headline. If you're showing an image, maybe try, instead of showing an image of the product, try showing a big social proof. If you're showing one form of social proof, try 2. If you're showing those G2 trust badges, maybe show logos instead. These are all possibilities. These are proven tactics that work for B2B SaaS. And you can be bold, you can be creative, you can rethink your brand, and you can test your way into a new homepage this way.
Yeah. So the answer is, even if you've got a really bad homepage, you can take some bigger A/B. You can take some bigger swings with A. But A/B testing is still the way. You still want to be driven by data.
Yeah, it's a approach to A/B testing. I'm not saying it's the only approach. I will humbly say I think it's the best, but it's not the only one. But taking big swings, but taking big swings doesn't mean that's every test you run. You take a big swing. Let's say you run 4 A/B tests on your homepage. Might take you a quarter to do that. Probably have to run each test for 2 to 4 weeks. You get the optimal one. Then you can do more incremental testing. And you can say, okay, here's what we know our audience generally responds to, is this combination of a really great hook in the headline, the subheadline that supports the bold claim. By the way, number one mistake I see all the time is a homepage will make this bold claim. It's a big hook. And then instead of substantiating that claim and making it credible, they make new claims in the subheading. Your audience, if you make a bold claim, you got to get the audience to believe that claim. The first job is to create a hook that gets their attention. But if you don't then make it believable and credible, people don't stick around. And you see that. You see bounce rate, you see people don't convert. But you find that combination, then test your way into an incrementally better one. For example, that might mean changing out the social proof, one variable at a time, seeing, does that make a difference?
Yeah, that's great, because when let's say we're not starting from a good place, we do a lot more changes. Okay, let's have a benefits driven headline. Let's have the description to back that up. Let's change a lot. We try and make the big jumps, and then months and months down the line, it's like, let's now change one thing at a time, so we actually know that this winner is because of this one change that then you can apply to other pages. But it's you can change your strategy depending on where you are at, which is interesting. Where can people follow you? Tell us about CRO Crimes. Where can they find that?
Find me on LinkedIn, Sahil Patel. I post 4 mornings a week, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Always in small, bite-sized chunks you can digest in about a minute or less. If you want to see something fun, I have a game show called CRO Crimes, Conversion Rate Optimization Crimes. The guests come on, they try to beat me in 6 lightning rounds, and the winner gets $100 for their charity.
Amazing.
A lot of fun.
Thank you very much. Sahil,
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I know you're doing big things in CRO, but I have also been seeing you commenting and helping like a lot of younger entrepreneurs and stuff like that on LinkedIn. Like, I have seen that. So yeah, just want to say thank you, and excited to see what's next for you and Spiralyze.
Oh, you're welcome. First of all, thank you for having me. And Joseph, I follow what you're doing. I think you're doing great things too, and look forward to where you take this.
Thank you very much.